Welcome to this special edition of Travel Like an Ochieng. This will be a departure from my typical format. Today we will be featuring a conversation with a college student traveler. She will be sharing some tips and tricks for our community to use. I'm planning on adopting this format for content in the future for about once a month. Otherwise, I will continue to use the format that you've grown accustomed to. If you have any questions, please post them in the section below. Time to get to it. More after this. All right. Good afternoon. This is Eric Ochieng from Travel Like an Ochieng. And today our guest is my daughter, Eliana Ochieng. And I invited her on today to talk about her latest cruise experience. And she's here to share some of her insights. I have some questions for you, Ellie. Do you prefer Ellie or Eliana?
We can do Ellie. I just
Okay.
put whatever first.
Okay. Have you done many of these types of interviews before?
Not really. I've never done one that's live like this, so this is exciting.
Yes, it is. I do have chat turned off. In the future, I'll have chat turned on so that you'll be able to see in real time what people are asking. And depending on the flow, we can decide. You can decide if you want to answer them or we'll just keep it flowing. So that's what we're going to do today.
Awesome.
All right. So I know that you've been cruising since you were very young. Could you talk a little bit about, not in great detail, just give the audience an idea of some of your first cruising memories? What do you remember, and how young do you think you were?
Well, I actually definitely do remember. It was the summer of me going into 5th grade, and it was a Disney cruise. So I was probably like 8 or 9, maybe 10. But I remember that cruise because we could watch movies that weren't released yet ahead of time on that cruise, and we left Hadara in, like, they have this kids only zone, and she couldn't get
We'll
out.
explain to the audience who Hadara is.
Oh yeah, that's my little sister.
Okay.
She's also been
How
my
much
travel-
younger is she than you?
2 years.
Okay.
She's 2 years younger, so she's my travel bud. But she got stuck and they wouldn't let her leave, and we were in a movie for like 2.5 hours and she was stranded there, and she has not forgiven us to this day for that.
Yes,
So.
that is definitely true. So you set this up a little bit for us. So on Disney, they really focus on safety and security. Would you say?
Oh yeah, definitely. You have to. There are so
Yeah.
many young people and young
Correct.
kids on that cruise. So.
And with that safety and security, what ended up happening was Dara, for whatever reason,
It's
yeah.
because he did not sign the paperwork.
Yeah.
It's really because of him.
Yes, there's some security paperwork that a parent can sign that lets the kid. Yeah. So that's right. You had passed the age where it wasn't mandatory for me to sign you out, and I had forgot. That's right. You're bringing it back. Oh wow, it was my fault. All these years, I kept blaming poor Dara on the fact that she couldn't. She just didn't come, but it was.
No.
You're right. At the beginning of that cruise, because she was under the age that they had for self sign out,
Yeah.
I was supposed to sign a waiver saying that she can self sign out.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
No, you didn't.
Oh, thank you for reminding me of that.
Oh, of course.
Well, could you tell me a little bit about why you think it's important for young people to cruise?
Yeah, I think that it really builds on like your social abilities, to be honest. And I think that's especially important now that like so many young people have missed out on those really important years in developing those social skills. So on a cruise, you're forced, you're in a small space with a lot of people your own age, and it gives you the opportunity to meet a lot of people from around the world with very different backgrounds to you, and I love it.
Awesome. Now, can you remember a time where you made friends on a cruise and it traveled throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, I still am friends with a lot of the people I've met on cruises, whether it's just following each other through Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, but I still like wish people happy birthdays that I was on cruises with. Like, it's fun like that. And it's just like the idea of maybe one day meeting again, that sort of thing. It's fun.
Yeah, great. So people always talk about, I know some families, they will always pick a particular type of cruise. For example, to go to a cabin, or they go down to Florida, one spot. Should a family limit themselves to just one destination every year for a vacation, in your opinion?
I don't think so. That's also just not how I was raised, so there's a little bias there. But I will say that I think it's nice to have those spots that are familiar to you, but part of the like novelty behind travel is understanding the differences in the world, and understanding how important it is to see those differences and acknowledge those differences. I think that if a lot more people got to travel more in a more diverse manner, that people would maybe be nicer to one another, or like understand different aspects of different cultures type thing. So I think it's extremely important to have diversity in your travels.
Awesome. I think you're right, because I know individuals who will just go to the Caribbean, or just go to Canada, and they
Right.
limit themselves. And yeah, that's nice to do that, and you get this sense of almost like, not an, I don't want to say an anchor, but you get this calling to go back to that particular. Aruba is another place. A lot of people like to go to Aruba, and it's a great place, and there's a lot of things for you to do. But I agree with you that you should really spread it out and have different experiences. At the end of the day, if you really liked a certain region, you could go back,
Oh yeah,
but it doesn't limit you to just being in that one spot. So yeah, I appreciate that. Who was your favorite cruise line, and give me a little reason why you like that particular cruise line?
okay, my favorite cruise line, and this is honestly at this point by far, is Royal Caribbean. Nothing against other cruise lines, and yes, I have been on a lot of cruise lines. I've been on Carnival, Disney, Celebrity, MSC now. So I have a really good understanding of what it's like. I just think that for how much you're paying, you get a lot more out of the experience on Royal. They offer better, in my opinion, I think the service is way nicer. The food overall is way nicer. I will say Carnival has good, like, snacky foods, though. I will give it to Carnival for that. But overall, for the amount of places you're going to be going, safety measures, they're on top.
Talk about some of the activities that's on a royal ship that interest like people in your age bracket.
Yeah, so I am 21. So we get to party a little bit on these cruises.
But
They
did you
have
feel yourself limited under 21? Did you
no,
find you didn't have
definitely
things
not.
to do?
No, not at all. Not at all. So when I was growing up going on cruises, I'll start younger then, just so that people get an idea. I started going on cruises when I was really young. So they had kids clubs during that time, which was always fun. But once you get older, you're like a teenager tween. You're not hanging out with your parents, as you know. That. And so they had like teen clubs, which always had activities going on, which were not lame. It was a lot of fun. And it's the way you kind of meet people and get to know people, which is awesome. I love that. They also have like late night clubs when you're in that age group. So it's only for you guys. It's curated only for you guys. There's no one else who can get in. And it's like dance parties, whatever it is. Scavenger hunts, that sort of thing. It's really entertaining. And then
And now as a 21-year-old, because you're just newly 21, it's not like
right,
you've been there forever.
right.
What are the types of things that you think you'll be experiencing now that you're quote unquote of legal age?
Well, luckily I've been on a cruise at 21. So I do also know that side of it. Nightclubs, you get to go to the clubs now, which is nice. The shows at any show, any hour. Some boats do have a curfew, so sometimes you run into that issue if you're a little younger. But not when you're 21. You can go to dance clubs, all that sort of stuff. So it's nice. It's really
Great.
nice.
Thank you. Would you tell me about a time that you had a bad experience, and did it turn you off from cruising?
Yeah, this last cruise I went on, I had a bad experience. Safety is a major thing, obviously, on any ship you're on. And it's super important that people take it seriously.
And just to remind our audience, what was your last cruise? What ship were you on, and what
I was
cruise
on
line?
MSC. I forget which ship
But an
specifically.
MSC product.
Yes, and I can get you the name and you can put it below.
Okay.
I just forget the name right now.
Yeah, that's okay.
It was going to Bahamas. It was a really quick cruise. It was like 4 days. Great price. They're new in the US, so that's part of the reason why the price was so good. Just to compete against bigger brands and get their name out there. Anyway, safety is really important. I totally understand that, and I think it's really important to take it serious. However, I feel like kind of people were taking advantage of this. On this cruise, it was a younger crowd, or at least people with younger kids, or at least teenagers, like a lot of teens, which is fine. Like I was there too. I was probably really obnoxious. But on our one day we were going to be in port. The morning of, at 4:30 a.m., they made an announcement that they were looking for someone over the loudspeaker, like in your room, not in the halls.
Yep.
Not like, because there's two speakers. There's one that plays in the halls and one for like emergencies in your room. And it woke us up, and so tired. We were like, what the heck? Like, hopefully this person's okay, obviously. Mm-hmm. But then, right when I fell back asleep, or was about to, an hour later, there goes another alarm.
For a different person or the same person?
For a different person.
Oh my goodness.
At 5:30 a.m. on the day we're going to be in port. And like, if you got to do it, you got to do it.
Yeah. But I know this reference is going to go over your head, but I'm going to use it anyway because a lot of our audience remembers this film. There was a movie called The Hunt for Red October. Do you remember the name of that movie?
The most brilliant commander in the Soviet Navy.
Ramey has trained most of their officer corps. He's nearly a legend in the submarine community.
The most deadly submarine ever built.
This thing could park a couple of hundred warheads off Washington. Nobody'd know a thing about it until it was all over.
And once more, we play our dangerous game with our old adversaries, the American Navy.
His plan is a mystery.
A man with your responsibilities reading about the end of the world.
Apparently, he has suffered a kind of nervous breakdown in which he announced his intention to fire his missiles on the United States.
You want us to help you hunt him down, kill him?
Open the outer doors, firing point procedures.
We sail into history.
I'm gonna blow him right to Mars.
Ramius might be trying to defect.
You're just an analyst. What can you possibly know what goes on in his mind?
I'll give you 3 days to prove your theory correct.
I am not field personnel. I am only an analyst.
You're perfect.
I'm expendable.
He's defecting. You willing to bet your life on that?
From the best-selling novel by Tom Clancy. From the director of Die Hard.
Give this man a chance.
My orders are specific. Battle stations.
Sean Connery, Alec Baldwin, James Earl Jones, Scott Glenn, Sam Neill. The Hunt for Red October.
No.
Anyway, it was about the United States and Russia and a nuclear submarine. And at the end of that movie, it just reminds me of what you just said. Perhaps in the future will come a time where technology allows us to see what really happened to the other ship. And the U.S. person not missing a beat turns around and said, "So you lost another ship?" So, this whole concept of you losing one person and they're doing all the stuff behind the scenes. And then they call again, and then I can just see you opening your eyes. So you lost another person.
Yeah, that's how it felt. It really felt like that. I was like, all right, guys, not everybody's jumping overboard tonight. Not everybody. But no, I wouldn't say that like turned me off from cruising. It was just an inconvenience. I haven't had any experiences that really would turn me off. If you're somebody who gets seasick, there are solutions for that. My boyfriend gets extremely seasick, and that we went on a smaller ship. So you really feel it on those smaller ships.
Yeah, so explain that to us. That's a very good point. So talk about the size ships that you typically go on, and then talk about that concept of if you're on a smaller ship and what could potentially happen, and then that dovetails exactly
with like your Royal Caribbeans, your Carnivals, those can have like 5,000, 6,000
Yes.
people. It's essentially like a whole city on the water. It's really impressive. But this ship was...
And there's not much movement, right? You don't
There's
really
not
get
much
seasick.
movement at all. I
Yep.
never had a problem on those ships. And then I was on a ship that was much smaller. It was 2,000 people, which still sounds like a lot of people, a lot of space.
But the
But
boat
it's
definitely is
the
significantly
boat is
smaller.
significantly smaller.
Yeah.
So it was storm season too.
Yes, you could really feel it.
Right. So you can really feel it. So that's really the difference in between those. But other than that, like you can get those wristbands that have a pressure point like right on your wrist.
Do those work for you?
They have worked for me. When we
Yeah.
went on Celebrity, I got seasick and had those bands, and they make a huge difference. It made a huge difference for Jackson too when he wore them. So for people who immediately need to go to the bands, it takes 2 hours. So if you are going to be on ship, get there 2 hours early where they're not going to be moving and put those on, or put them on land, and just so that it makes everything smoother.
Also, the key is to put it on when you're in a stable location before you're moving.
Yeah.
Got it. That's great.
So you don't feel it at all.
Yep. All right. So, you know about TLAO. Could you tell me a little bit about your role in TLAO?
Yeah, sure. I started to do a few interviews, or I guess reviews, when I went abroad in 2022. So I've just been coming in here and there whenever I go on a trip that I think's interesting and adding to the channel.
Awesome. So what you're saying too is all of your travel experience isn't just cruising, correct?
Right. Yeah. So I've done a lot of different type of traveling. Love cruises though, because they're easy and I don't have to think much. But no, I do a lot of traveling. My next travel plans, I'm going on spring break to Cancun, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I just booked my flights to Europe for graduation. So I'm going to go with 4 other friends. So that'll be fun.
Awesome. Could you tell me about a bucket list cruise you might have, cruise destination you'd like to go on?
Yes, I would love to go on a cruise of either like around Asia, because I think that would be tough for me to do alone at this point right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be a good introduction. Or like Greece. I would love to do a Greece cruise. Or like Alaska.
Yeah.
It's really all over the place, but those are my top 3.
Yeah, so you know that the Alaska cruise is really easy from where I live in Seattle, and the seasons for doing that is from May to September. So if you ever in your travel plans want to do that, you can easily just come and do that. They leave every weekend, and it's a great thing. So yeah,
have you done
awesome.
Alaska?
I've been to Alaska several times. In fact, I'll be doing an Alaska cruise later this year.
Oh.
But I'm going to do it on Holland American, so it'll be my first time. And there's a reason why I'm going on Holland American. The Holland ships, which is a part of the Carnival Cruise Line company, the Holland brand was one of the original brands that brought immigrants over at the turn of the century.
Wow.
And this year marks their 250th year up in Alaska. And of all the cruise lines that have gone up there, I've been on a Carnival ship that went to Alaska. I've been on a Royal ship that went to Alaska, which is really nice, Royal Oasis. What I like that the Holland ship is going to do is you get a more intimate exposure to the glaciers.
Yeah.
And from what I'm understanding, I haven't seen it as much yet, and it wasn't too bad actually it was pretty bad with when I went up with Royal. There was really no ice. There was not, you couldn't really see anything. Albeit I did go in the summertime.
Okay.
But there should be some ice coverage, and there really wasn't. And a lot of the glaciers are disappearing. And one of the things that you get with the Holland American cruise is a guarantee up into Glacier Bay and like up front and personal with some of the glaciers. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's awesome. That's cool.
So you've been a student for 4 years, and you have a bunch of your other college friends. What is your philosophy? What do you think about travel for college students? Is it possible? And if so, how? And if not, why?
Yeah. Traveling as a college student is extremely possible. You just have to be extremely flexible. And I think that traveling when you're young and I know a lot of people will be like, oh, I'll just work really hard at the beginning of my life and then I'll get to traveling when I'm old. I've also talked to a lot of people who did do that with their significant other, and their one regret was not traveling more when they were young, when they could put up with doing the long layovers or switching flight type things. So I think that there's a real advantage to being young. You just have to be able to know where you're looking and what you're looking for, which are typically deals. For this Europe trip, I'm paying nothing for a round trip nonstop to Europe.
How'd you achieve that?
So that was another way of just being flexible. I had the opportunity. I had a flight to Aruba over the summer, and they overbooked our flight, which happens a lot more than you would think. Flights always overbook by one person. So my best friend and I, we rock paper scissors, and we decided who was gonna have to stay behind. It was me, and I went up to them, and they were at $1,000 in credit, and I was gonna split it with my best friend. So I said, you still need someone? And they said, yep. And I said, make it $2,000 in credits and I'll stay behind. So they doubled it, and I got $2,000 in flight credits. And they told me,
sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
You just said something really important. It's a great tip. So even though you knew you were in the right, or the airline was in the wrong, and they came to you with what they thought was their final offer, you still negotiated more.
Oh, yeah.
So there's something to be said to advocate for yourself and
definitely.
not just take what they give you.
Oh, definitely. And I think part of that is like watching you when you travel. He's a big negotiator. So, yeah.
You meaning me.
they needed me to stay off that flight more than they cared about the additional $1,000 credit. So yeah, so now that gave me the ability to travel to Europe for free. So it's like stuff like that. Like, what can you do?
Awesome. No, that's great. And I really have to tell you that I'm really proud of you and your sister for really internalizing a lot of these. It really is a philosophy or way of life, right? It's not just, you guys have taken it to that next level, right? So I'm really happy for the both of you, and it's going to open it up for you when you eventually have your young family, to be able to take these types of thoughts and ideas and help them. So tell me a little bit about, speaking of that, of starting young and getting benefit from it. I know that a lot of cruise lines offer points, loyalty points.
Yeah.
What benefit have you seen with loyalty, especially with Royal?
So Royal specifically, because as I said, I love Royal. We've been on so many at this point. First of all, Royal has, in my opinion, the best system. They allow you basically any points that I go on with my dad when I was below 18. I get those points anyway, regardless. So if you can take your kids on 5 cruises and get them so many points, make them a diamond member, emerald at that point, I think it is. I'm not quite sure. One of the two. It really sets them up later in life to also continue to do that sort of stuff with a lot more benefits. So one thing I will say is, if you're booking a Royal Caribbean or really any cruise, there is no pain in going to an agent or travel agent for that. Even if you have something picked out, even if you think you know the price, doesn't matter. They'll get you free stuff, discounts, that sort of thing. So always recommend doing that. The points that you earn through these programs gets you special benefits on the ship. So whether it's for Royal, they have like literally a diamond member room. Like, you can't get in unless you're a diamond, which is just, it's bougie, makes you feel a little special. But there are other things, free drinks, off the package, free, like a ton of free stuff. There's a giant checklist that it goes down. And the more cruises you go on with them, the more benefits you get, whether it's a free gift, champagne, like regardless of what it is, you're getting it. It's nice.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. And I always joke with other parents, because literally, like, to get to Diamond or Diamond Plus or Pinnacles, Pinnacle's the highest.
Yeah.
It takes years of traveling, right? So the fact that you and your sister had memberships when you were young, by the time you're kind of as an adult, you're
Right.
just being handed that higher level. You don't have to go, you don't have to cut your teeth on all the other crappy things that you have to. Well, there's nothing crappy in a cruise, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
As a young adult, you're going to be able to take full advantage of your Diamond Plus, and Pinnacle status. Would you not travel if your friends decided not to go? Would you not go on a trip?
No, definitely not. I don't think that. I think that I love the part of traveling where you meet people. So I think that's also a personality thing. So it really depends on who you are. But I would never let someone not going somewhere determine what I want to do. And I think if you're living life that way, then you really should reconsider some of your choices.
Some of your life choices.
But regardless, no, I don't think that you should be deterred from going on a trip just because one of your friends or some of your friends won't go with you. That's not a reason not to see the world. You don't know what opportunities are awaiting you there.
Awesome. Great. What are your thoughts on travel insurance? What do you think about it? Your honest, unvarnished thoughts.
So, as somebody who's trying to travel on a budget, I think that you need to weigh the trips you're going on. How short is it? How much money would you really be missing out on if you didn't have insurance and versus if you did? So I like to weigh it in my head as in, am I going to be, like with the cruise I just went on, it wasn't a lot of money. I wouldn't be missing out on a lot of money at all. It would suck, but it's not something I would cry over. Still got insurance for that trip. But I just weigh it in my head. So like this Europe trip, I'm getting travel insurance because it's a lot more money than I would be wanting to miss out on. But it's really dependent on where you're at and what your traveling goals are.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I do want to add there, I know especially younger folks, they see it as an extra expense, and it is. However, you're literally laying down pennies to save you literally thousands of dollars. For example, if you were to break your leg, God forbid, or get stranded somewhere and it wasn't your fault, your insurance, especially with a medical evacuation, could easily run you $20,000 or $30,000 just to evacuate you and get you treated. In a lot of foreign countries, they won't even treat you unless you have cash money. And so that's the real benefit of travel insurance. You literally pay pennies for it. Doesn't cost pennies, but you pay a couple $100, but you're covered for tens of thousands of dollars of coverage. And on top of that, there's two ways you could do that. And I'm on a little bit of a soapbox. If you know you're going to do more than 2 or 3 cruises in a year, it makes sense for you to just simply get a yearly plan. And that's what I'm under. I bought a yearly travel plan. And so I had a trip in February, which was a back-to-back. I told you about my other cruises I'm going to do, but I paid for my policy once, just like you do with your car insurance or your home insurance. I'm covered throughout the year. So that's even cheaper than doing the onesie twosies like you're doing. But it's good that you're even thinking about it in the first place. So, do it the way you're doing it until you understand that it just makes sense to get a yearly policy. And that's got some advice from me to you or to our fellow travelers that, a annual travel plan or travel insurance really makes sense. And I can leave some recommendations below on who I would like, who I go with and who I've recommended for you. When you're on a cruise, you're looking for something to do. And I'm talking specifically about excursions. What are some of the criteria you use to pick an excursion? And I want you to talk a little bit about, going with a ship-sponsored excursion versus an excursion on your own. So kind of talk about both.
Yeah. So for excursions, at least on my last ship that I went on, MSC, they did it in a very different way than I've seen other cruises do it. And you'd have to tell me if anybody else does it this way. But basically you can order or you can schedule your excursions before, whether it's an on-ship event, so like if you want a spa treatment, if you want a massage, whatever it is, you can book it before for a lot cheaper, like a lot cheaper. So definitely always recommend looking at what their fine print says there. I know with other cruises, the rates go down towards the end of the week. That's another way that happens. But just look at what the cruise line's policy is really.
Yeah. So in particular, you told me about your spa day. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We did it was a couples package, so we both got access to like private jacuzzis, saunas, dry and wet saunas.
Now those could be really expensive. How were you able to?
It was not bad. We got it on the first day, so we still got a discount on it. But it wasn't as good of a discount as we were gonna get on it, so that was a mistake on our ends. But it was probably.
Talk about that a little bit. What happened?
We tried calling their customer service, and the customer service just I don't think English was their first language, and I think for this cruise line that's pretty standard. So if you're somebody who speaks Spanish or literally any other language, I heard so many different languages on this cruise, probably the most diverse amount of languages on one cruise, to be honest. I wouldn't even say English was known by everybody on the ship. So that being said, it could work if you know another language. We didn't, so it was a little harder, which is fine. But it also meant that guest service was also a little bit harder to work with. And when we called asking about the price and how it worked, they didn't really understand what the product or service was, so that made it hard. So that's why we missed out on that one, because we didn't want to just like do it to do it. But then once we were on the ship and could talk to somebody else, it was fine.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're getting towards the end of this, but I did want to ask you just a couple more questions.
Yeah.
One of them being, clearly you're a well-seasoned traveler, and I'm sure you do a lot of research on YouTube. Besides TLAO, do you have a favorite vlogger that you follow? And if not, like what would you look forward to in a vlogger? And has TLAO given you value added information to help your cruising get better?
Yeah, of course. So of course I love your channel. I personally, when I have free time to like watch some of these influencers and stuff, I don't typically watch her on YouTube, so I'm not sure if she has a channel. But her name is Zintate, I think.
Yeah, you'll have to send me your information. We can put it in the description below to give her a shout out.
Oh yeah, for sure. I watch her on TikTok, but she typically does solo traveling. She's also young. She's also Black, which I think for young Black women, it's important to like understand the dynamics of a country. Not that that should ever deter you from going somewhere, but it's important to be aware of what's going on. Or how maybe the energy is towards you. I think that goes for anybody though. But it's super relevant information, at least to me. That being said, yeah, that's kind of who I like to turn to. I watch a lot of like TikTok for my travel stuff, just because it's so quick, you know?
Yeah.
But
yeah, so just I'll talk a little bit about that, because I know in my generation, because my vlogs tended to be longer, and then I was able to condense them down. But even still, it's considered long form. And the format of like TikTok is like a minute or two.
Yeah.
But they pack in a lot of information. One very last thing. I just wanted to ask you, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
Yes. Travel when you're young. Travel when you can still sleep in hostels. Travel every vacation week your boss ever gives you, because no job is guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed. So make sure that you get to explore and enjoy your time. So definitely travel. And force everybody around you to travel too.
I want to thank you again. That was a great response, and I really appreciate you not only as my daughter, but as a fellow traveler. And I really encourage you to get out there and travel like an Ochieng. One thing that I do want to say is the namesake of this channel is from a conversation that you and I had, where you were busting my chops about how much we travel as a family, and you said, "No, why don't you just travel like an Ochieng?" And then that became the channel. So you are responsible for TLAO. And I thank you for that.
Of course. It's bougie traveling.
Okay. And until next time.
Goodbye.